Well, good morning, everybody. First of all, I just wanted to kind of give you a quick preface of one of the things I'm going to cover in this video. I have received a lot of text messages and emails and just questions as I've traveled the country listening to growers asking me about 2012. I think there's something about this particular year that's got folks concerned about a repeat of what we saw back in 2012. So I'm going to go ahead in this video and just show you where I see some parallels and where I don't. And I always get worried about doing something like this because that's such a polarizing year for many of us in the Midwestern United States, just as a specific example. But I understand why the questions are coming in. I mean, we look at this and we see just yesterday the size of this dust storm again that left parts of Mexico, New Mexico, into Texas around this next low pressure system. Now, this low pressure system is not going to be producing the severe weather threat to the south like the previous one did. We can also see some spin just off the coast here, making some pretty strong winds and some big swells in the ocean here. But one of the things about having a low in this position is that we're very limited on the moisture return into this section of the country with this next system coming out. So this was up till sunset last night, just as the temperatures were dropping rapidly and we're preparing for strong winds and a blizzard event that's going to be farther to the north. But I wanted to show you this Texas dust a bit closer, just to once again see the size of one of these dust storms as they come out again, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, and kind of push their way across the country. And I also want to show you what's helping a lot of this along. You see this cloud field right in through here? That is cloud kind of streaming in this piece of the subtropical jet that over the last couple of weeks has helped initiate now 3 of these storm systems in the midsection of the United States. But as I mentioned, the temperatures are dropping behind this system pretty rapidly. Here's the 24-hour temperature change map. And as this is taking shape, I mean, we're looking in parts of Colorado, New Mexico, temperatures 10 to 20 degrees cooler than average, and they're going to rapidly be dropping in this area on the backside of this low. So here it is, 6:35 this morning, all hazards weather map. Broad area of blizzard warning in through here, surrounded by high wind watches and high wind warnings. We then see the red flag warnings to the south, the wind advisories that extend across many more states here in the Midwest, Mid-South, Ohio Valley. And then as you get over toward the Appalachian Mountains, another area of red flag warning in this region. And the winds around this system are quite potent. Now, in the upper levels of the atmosphere, there's actually 2 pieces to this system. There's a shortwave on the backside, and there's the deeper low that's sitting here with a jet streak running through the base of this trough. So this is actually an excellent setup for the rapid intensification of a mid-latitude cyclone right here out ahead of all of this, so that the low will be deepening, pulling the system along in that direction. Meanwhile, there's another deep low that's sitting off the coast. In fact, let's go have a look at that one in the surface wind field. There we go. And this broader low here is really just churning up a lot of big waves, but it is what is preventing a much larger area of high pressure, which is sitting over Florida at this point, to opening up the Gulf to much, much more moisture transport. So as a result, we're going to be looking at a relatively narrow corridor of moisture getting into the Midwest with some instability to it, and that's going to highlight where our severe weather threat's going to be as this low moves forward with the snow on the backside of it here. So on radar this morning, this is what it looks like. So gathering last night, coming out of Colorado into Kansas, Nebraska, slipping through South Dakota, now into western Iowa. There's our system. And there's a very narrow band on the backside of very heavy snow taking shape right now. There was a transition last night from even some thunderstorm activity here quickly over to sleet and then eventually to snow. And imagine some of you were watching the temperatures drop rapidly, probably a transition in precipitation type and thunder is all right here incorporated in this one system. Now, the winds around the system today are pretty strong. We can see that the maximum wind gusts, which extend from the plains all the way to Lake Michigan here, we're looking at a broad area of 50-plus mile-an-hour wind gusts. So it's going to be quite windy in parts of the Northeast around that low that's off the coast, and then our next system coming into the Pacific Northwest. But if we just take a look first at some of the highlights of this system, this is this morning's high-res NAM forecast for total snowfall. And I'm going to primarily use this not for snowfall amounts. I think they're going to be very challenging to figure out how much snow is going to come through this area. But as you can see, there's a narrow swath of snow here where we could easily pick up, 4 to some places maybe 10 inches of snow. And I don't think we're done with it in the upper Midwest at all as we go into this, late March timeframe. Now, there will be a few pockets in through here that do see these higher amounts. And don't be surprised if on the backside of this low, after warming up and seeing severe weather today in Illinois, we get some snow showers on the backside of this that could come through, maybe piling up again in some places like they did with the previous system. What's amazing about this is that earlier in the week, if you just come over to this part of Nebraska, we had temperatures in the low 80s here, and now we're back into blizzard conditions. And I think that's what's prompting a lot of these questions about, is this season highly anomalous, and a year that just sticks out in folks' minds is 2012. Why? Because 2012 also brought 80s way far to the north multiple times in the month of March, and then quickly followed them with big systems. So our memory is what's bringing up these weather correlations, and we just have questions about it. So I'm going to get to it. It's all right here. Just hang on for just a second. I do want to show you the latest Storm Prediction Center update. This is what they changed last night. They did go with a larger area in here of enhanced risk, and this is going to be a very, very challenging forecast in parts of Illinois today. It's to see if we do build in enough instability to take advantage of the synoptic scale wind shear of this area. We've got to pull in enough, low-level humidity, and then watch that frontal boundary, the upper-level front kick through here to possibly, to toss out some supercells ahead of the cold front, which will follow this. And I will just mention that I fully trust the Storm Prediction Center and knows this and what's going on. But the model differences are pretty important to take note of. So I'm just going to start this about 8 o'clock this morning. Snow on the backside. We're going to be watching for some thunderstorm activity out ahead of this. But here's the low by 11 a.m. Then we get in here into early afternoon. It's 1, 2, and 3, and 4 o'clock. So what we're going to have to watch is these areas out ahead of this where we could see these individual storm cells. The reason why they are single-celled is because of the shear vector. So when you look at the surface winds versus the upper level winds, it'll be enough to push them off of the boundary rather than giving you one big long squall line. And so we're just going to keep an eye here. I would just say late this afternoon, right in through this part of Illinois. It may not look like much, but this is the high-resolution rapid refresh, possibly just giving us the indication that we could be watching some supercell thunderstorm development in this region. So then on the backside, this is all snow. Again, this is a simulated radar animation. We watch that push into Indiana into the evening hours. And then the frontal boundary kind of just slides into Ohio, lower Michigan, and there's the snow coming in on the backside of this by late tonight into early tomorrow morning. It seems to press out of Illinois into Indiana and Michigan by the time we get about 8 o'clock tomorrow morning Central Time, and then it'll move quickly off to the east, leaving some much colder air in its wake. Now that's a simulated radar animation out through 36 hours, which gets us to about 1 o'clock on Thursday. I want to give you a broader view from the high-res NAM of the same system, but now we're going to look at the color coding according to precipitation type. So here we are playing through the middle of the day today into this evening. So that's 5 o'clock. So take note of the difference. The high-res NAM has got the storms here at 5. Where did the HER have them? Way up there. So see, these model differences are key in trying to understand this. And this there's information in this, but honestly, whenever I see such large, differences, what I will be doing all day long is watching the surface observations to see how quickly the front passes and watching radar to know when the timing of these stronger storms could be moving across Illinois. So there you go. You see them getting into Indiana by 9 o'clock versus when the HER does it, which is much earlier. And there's the snow on the backside. You can just watch that again. Let's just take you from 1 o'clock this afternoon through midnight tonight. There's the snow flipping over, coming through Illinois, Michigan, Indiana. By 10 a.m. tomorrow, it's out east of those states and starting to spread into the eastern Great Lakes. The frontal boundary swipes through parts of the mid-Atlantic. Not a severe weather threat here tomorrow. And then after that, we're watching a little band of snow that's getting squeezed out of some frontogenesis here along the U.S.-Canada border, and our next system hitting parts of the Pacific Northwest in the overnight hours on Thursday into Friday morning. All right. So that's just a quick kind of look at this next system as it rolls through, and now you've kind of seen some of the high impact events surrounding it. So where we go from here is back to the Pacific Ocean. Now, what has the narrative been for most of the last 2 weeks? Waves, right? We've seen broader synoptic scale troughs. And now we see the jet stream doing something that was quite familiar in winter, which is lining out again, zonal. Now here's the waves, 1, 2, they're still going across here. But when we start to see the jet stream making this transition back over to more zonal behavior, it is definitely going to affect the downstream weather across the U.S., right? So I want to show you one way by which we can observe that. The jet is expected to start here at a poleward position and then extend and then drop back down toward the equator. Now that is a forecast from this, what we call the North Pacific Jet phase diagram. It's kind of just giving us a clue as to what it's going to do, but I want to show you what this means by looking across the North Pacific. Now the jet extension, the polar jet extension, is here right now. That's where we start, right in this area. And as I play it forward, you can see it's really pushing farther to the north. But that's through Friday. Now watch what happens as we get into the weekend and into early next week. Like, where did it go? I mean, it just falls apart. And the flow gets, I can see it splitting off into two pieces. There's the northern branch. There's the stronger southern branch. But that's a lot of weak flow here. And we're getting a resulting ridge downstream early next week across the west. And what I'm worried about is it's going to cut off a low and just leave it right there. So watch right here. This is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. There it is. It just sits there and spins while the jet gets highly meridional. That's north-south. Look at that. There's breaking up into these interesting pieces just 8, 9, 10 days from now. And it seems to just want to leave a trough of low pressure off the coast, a ridge here, flow out of the northwest through the midsection of the country, and that's a drier signal again. And we're concerned about these drier signals because of where we just started the video. We've now watched, I believe if you include yesterday's dust storm, that's the 4th or 5th I've seen since the beginning of March, or really since the end of February. And if you just look at the next 10 days, okay, we're wetter than average here. That's the current system going through. And then outside of that, we're drier across a big section of the United States going forward. And what's important is to compare this to where we've been. Like, we've been quite dry for the last month across parts of the Dakotas, parts of Kansas, and outside of one system that snuck right in through here, this whole region of the Southern Plains has been very dry for the last 10 plus days. Parts of the Mid-South have been drier, although remember, in this we had the flooding event back, was that about 2 weeks ago that stretched into this area. We've been drier over here by the Appalachian Mountains as well, getting into this part of the Ohio River Valley. And so we're trying to just look at these regions that have not survived, but have pushed spring drought forward. Okay, and we're going to look at the drought model in a few moments. So what we need to do next is kind of see if any of these systems coming through could fill that in. But you just saw the 10-day forecast. So there shouldn't be any surprises when I show you the GFS versus the European model. We've examined this first system. There it goes. Presses into the northeast here. Front sweeps through the mid-Atlantic. When is this? This is Thursday evening, and it's offshore by early Friday morning. Clipper comes right over the Great Lakes. You can see it better in the GFS, I think, than in the European. That system rolls through, bringing in some clouds and some snow north and some rain south. Another system comes in, hits parts of the Cascades, adding more snow to a spot that just last week picked up 4 to 5 feet of snow here at the highest elevation. We've got more snow coming into the northern Rockies. And this next system, watch where it blows up its moisture. Next Sunday into early Monday. Again, it's a system that pulls most of its moisture over the Mississippi Valley, not back into the plains. So watch it again. This is a Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon and evening, getting into Monday. And that front clears through pretty quickly as well. So that's your next one. We then get out here to next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That is when the ridge has built into the west. So these systems are going to curl like this. Flow goes over the top. We're going to watch systems exit in the northeast. So here we are next Wednesday. Notice Wisconsin in the GFS, picking up some snow that's not in the European by next Wednesday. And then also watch the GFS as well. Watch this over here. This is getting out to next Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And the GFS is just dumping snow across parts of the upper Midwest as it goes through. So I want to show you that because the GFS is very aggressive on hitting Minnesota and Wisconsin and Michigan with heavy snow. Here's the current system, but take a look at that. You look at the next 10 days. Holy smokes, is the GFS going after this area. There you can see it right there. So system 1, system 2. Can you see the X? Why is it that way? Well, right now we've got troughs coming through, systems rolling out. Then when we build in a ridge in the west, they come over the top and they do this. And that is a path we've been quite familiar with. Now, I want to let you know that that's the 10-day GFS. The CPC is also just on the lookout at the end of the month of March for heavier snows here as well. Same thing for the Northern Rockies and Cascades and the Klamath Mountains, Northern Sierra. We're just looking at the slight risk at the very end of the month for that. But the GFS compared to the European is a little different solution. European models much farther to the north. It's the same crisscross, but much farther to the north on the snow and not nearly the amounts that the GFS is saying. It's about half. Now, is there still the chance in Wisconsin to pick up 6 to 8 inches of snow? Yeah, but it's not 18, which is what the GFS showed. All right. So take a look. That's what we've got right now. And I'm going to show you the probabilities. So this is just through the next 5 days. That's the chance of 3 inches. Here's the chance of 6. Very, very narrow swath of high impact snow. But if we go back to 3, watch what happens when I add in, there's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Now watch how it fills in. See it? Watch right here. This just fills in as we approach day 10. And so that's where the increased probability of these heavier snows come through. And here's the chance at 6 and 12. So I just want to show you that most of it's going to be coming from the first system. These next ones that come through have the just another reinforcing shot. Again, that's next week. So we'll be watching that pretty carefully in the models. Total precip, I do want to compare the models. This is the European 10-day, and this is the GFS 10-day. Not too far off in terms of position. It's just amounts. Like the European is much wetter here than the GFS, which you can see is drier. Look at the European there. 1 to 1.5 inches versus the GFS, which is about a half. But the GFS is aggressive here. 1 to 2 inches of liquid in this. I mean, that'd be huge for Wisconsin to get this. But you just continue to look at this and see these areas that are missed. So I showed you the wetter spots. Now let's look at the drier. This is the probability of staying under a half inch over the next 10 days. So the deepest shades of red represent a 90 to 100% chance of staying on the drier side of average. And here's, whoop, wrong click. Sorry, there we go. That's the probability of staying under a 1/10. And once again, we see the Southwest getting, across our Sun Belt into Texas and Oklahoma, then pockets throughout the northern plains continuing to stay dry as well. And that's our risk going forward in this forecast. So once we get out there, remember 10 days from now, we're going to watch a low here. So that flow is going to come around. Why? Look at the block that's taken shape right over there. You can see it just off the map, high over low. So that could get us into this pattern for a little while. And if it does, and we just look at the end of March, we're going to come back into a scenario where there's clippers and we're drier to the south. And that's what we're starting to see from some of these, longer term model forecasts, is that maybe we're going to just get stuck with something. Sorry about that. Some low off the coast, a reflective low here, and the pattern just comes over, around, and over, and it just keeps doing that. So that's a bit of a blocky look to this. So what do we end up getting out of that is the week 2 looks wetter north in all the models. You can kind of see it here. And the GFS most aggressive on keeping, also the ECMWF is as well, keeping parts of the Midwest, Great Lakes states on the wetter side of average, but we stay drier in these key areas that have been dry. Now, I've been showing you this this map for a while, and this begins our kind of longer term discussion about the year you've been asking about, which is 12. So I want to be clear, I am not attempting to increase hype. I'm just trying to answer some questions, that is all. So this would be the March 21 to April 21 outlook. And we've continued to see the models try to just keep a drier sector here, right? That's been a very common theme. But I want to point out, I was talking to a group of cotton growers yesterday, as we get to the end of April and start May, the models are attempting to go after a very stormy May in through this whole corridor, this whole area. And could be a feedback problem in the model with the temperature pattern, keeping so much colder air west. But I do need you to see that if the model has the transition right, which could be associated with La Nina, it could be associated with the MJO movement, I'm still struggling to stitch these teleconnections together. If I were to do it, I could make a narrative out of it, but I feel like I'm just trying to convince myself of something, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to show you this so we can monitor it together, all right? But there are some indications that we do get storms back into here, good ones, in May, which would be late April into May, which would be climatologically consistent with returning storm activity to the central United States. We need it. And we need it because we still have fall's drought. I've mentioned this thousands of times, it feels like. But this map showing 100 centimeters soil moisture percentile, which again is a rank, we just continue to see this broad area that has to have subsurface soil moisture getting recharged in a big hurry. And that's because if you look at the United States right now at our drought monitor, I'm just going to write some numbers over in the corner. A year ago, we had 21%, 21% of the lower 48 in D1 to D4 drought. This year, we've got 42% of the lower 48 in D1 to D4 drought. And we've got 66% of the country in some form of drought. And what I'm looking at here is a few different, I'll just call them epicenters of drought, okay? Now you're going, what about the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast? Okay, there is a fourth in this area, but I'm seeing this area here, I'm seeing this area here, and this area here. Now, why am I not circling here? Well, we're about to see a bunch of rain get into this area and snow. And we were worried about this region, but technically, this area is not deep in drought just yet. Now, we bring this up because you asked, I'm going to show you. This is how things looked at the end of the March in 2012. And we had it here, and we had it here, and there was drought trying to build in there. Now, that was March of 2012. And I'm getting asked, well, does 12 look like anything else? And so I can show you something because there's often a lot of emphasis put on the transition from La Nina to neutral, which is going to happen, because in 12 it did that as well. And by the time you got into August of 12, the drought monitor looked like that. And I'm going to show you how this happened, so it's very clear. But I want to make a point here. All right. This is the ocean temperatures inside this box. That's Nino region 3.4. It's one of our key areas we monitor for the strength of an INSO event, El Nino or La Nina. Now, if you notice this, there's an average. Okay, we typically watch the ocean temperatures fluctuate like that. And you're going, really only a degree or two? Yeah, that's it. But there is a tremendous amount of energy stored in the ocean, even in a couple of the degree swing. So in 2025, we bottomed out with La Nina at the end of January. We also bottomed out in December as well. We've been watching it really just push up like this. Now, if you're curious, let me take that off there. I'm going to show you 2012. And now the thought process, darn it, thought it would stay on there. If you notice, the line that just gets animated, that's 12. That was also a weak La Nina winter that faded into neutral during summer. Interestingly enough, La Nina came back the next winter a little bit as well. But you're going, wow, those two line up pretty closely. Well, let's go look at some other years. 2023 was very similar as well. See that? I almost lined up really, really well in 2023. But what about a year like, 2018? That one's kind of close too. 16, no, that was opposite. That was coming off of an El Nino winter. So we're not anywhere close to 16. But what about 2009? That's not a bad match either. I mean, you can see the same trajectories. You're going, what? This. That's what I'm seeing. Look at 2009. But 2009, in the middle of, summer, the momentum just cranked, and we didn't get the traditional post-La Nina drought episode in the midsection of the country. So we need to be careful with just this one analog year of 2012, even though there are some similarities. I just showed you the drought monitor. You're now looking at the ocean temperatures, and we can just kind of keep this narrative going, because when we think about one of our biggest problems so far this year, it's been with the humidity levels. In fact, let me blow that up so it's a little easier to see. What am I talking about? Well, this is since the middle of February, looking at specific humidity. That's the amount of moisture in the atmosphere, absolute, not relative. We've just been able to pull dry air. It's pushed our dry line farther to the east. And there's been moisture coming in from this direction, and we're going to see that again. So this has been our biggest issue, is we've already watched drought come out of these dry regions and start to press north. Now, tuck that away, because there's a temperature narrative with this as well before we get to the other comparisons for 2012. Here's your frost risk for the next 7 days. Take a look at the high temperatures. Very hot in the northeast today. The low is going to curl up rapidly here, dropping the temperatures quickly on the backside. Thursday, Friday, another warm-up taking place in the midsection of the country. Watch the west, though. Here's Saturday. Plains start to warm up once again. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Now, what's going on? Ridge is building in, flows coming over the top, trough setting up here. So now we're getting into this cooler look in this area toward the end of this month, while mild air hits the plains and west. Now, they've been cold for a while, so this is going to be a nice and much deserved warm up if you can deserve weather. But, you're just looking at it here. This is day 5 through 10. So again, you can see that impact of that trough of low pressure sitting here, the ridge that's downstream there, and the next trough of low pressure living here. But as we get out there day 10 through 15, we go back over mild. And if you keep it windy and mild down here, this is just going to increase evaporation rates. And that increase in evaporation rates will just continue to build drought in, because we know, we've looked at it. Where was it a moment ago? Here? That area for the next couple of weeks is drier. So I start to look at that, and then I go here. This is how March is shaped up so far. And I understand why we're getting these questions about 2012, because most of March has been very mild with just brief cool downs behind deep lows, right? I mean, that's what we've had. Temperatures rebound quickly, it gets super windy, but your March temperature ranks are pretty high. Now, let me show you something that we may try to get to, but we're not going to get there. That's 12. That was March of 12. Everywhere that is the number 1 was the new warmest March back in 2012. And it's, again, that compares to now too. That's a 133-year record. So why I go on and on about this is because when the atmosphere experiences a weak north-south, a weak meridional temperature gradient, there's no reason for the atmosphere to have strong upper-level winds. And it is the upper-level winds that come in this direction that drive weather systems in spring and summer. So that warm March, everybody loved it. We got into the fields fast. You talk to I don't think I've ever talked to a farmer in the Midwest that was not like, man, March 2012 was the best start I've ever had. I mean, this is why. But let's get into a discussion of what that typically does. And I'm going to add some years to this. I'm going to look at all of our years. There they are across the top, which got hot and dry right here. So if they're hot and dry there in summer, this is in summer, it's not on the coasts. So if you're watching me and you're on the coasts, you get the opposite of what I'm about to describe. What's interesting is March to May, during years where there was big time drought, tended to sink quite a bit of colder air in the west. Not much, it's just a couple degrees cooler than average. But we did at times get to see pretty active severe weather early in the midsection of the United States. And you know that I'm worried about not having that here this year. So just a point to make about what this pattern does. But what occurred was, by the middle of summer, the West Coast stayed cool. The Midwest cranked in terms of temperatures. And we were cooler along the Southeast as well. Now, what makes this happen? Well, this is your loss of temperature gradient. And that loss of temperature gradient results in this. And this is it. You want to know what drives central U.S. drought. It is all right here in these next 3 slides. The blues, this blue-green shading, represents the strength of a zonal wind at the jet stream level. Now, what does the phrase mean? Zonal, west to east. 250 millibars, jet stream. The zonal wind died. Where did it go? It was fast here, fast in Canada, fast into Europe. It was also fast way down in the Caribbean. The Gulf of Mexico, or Gulf of America. I don't know what to call it anymore. Getting out here into the Atlantic. But this whole area lost it. That is the consistent signal. Now, what that does when you lose all of this momentum is along the west coast of North America, without the pushing of the surface waters into this region, of very warm surface water that's here over to there, you get cold water that just upwells. And that's why when you stitch all of those years together, you get cold water Gulf of Alaska, cold water off the Baja. This is the sea surface temperature anomalies for all of these years that had major drought and heat episodes in the midsection of the United States. It takes a cold ocean, and the cold ocean is a symptom of the atmosphere losing its momentum. So I then get you to here. You say, well, what made 2012 king? All right, you ready? The momentum of the jet stream pushed warm water to right about there, and high pressure sat on top of it. And then we saw a bunch of cold water upwell in this reverse C shape. Gulf of Alaska coming off the Baja of California over toward Hawaii. La Nina ended. Warm water began to show up rapidly here. And the tail end of the La Nina lived right there. Let's put an L in it, or an LA, so you remember La Nina. And then if you have a look, the North Atlantic got quite warm and high pressure built into here. So the net effect of all of that was to leave a big area with weak upper level flow, right? And high pressure that resulted. So if you want to follow the jet, it went over, under, over, under. Whoops, I'm so sorry. That was too quick. Under, over, like that. 1, 2, 3. So we need to watch this. What do we have right now? You want to know why people are talking about 12? La Nina faded. It's already warming up right there. Where is it still living? Out there. There's already cold water that's off the Baja. You need to watch right here. Because if by June, if all of this goes warm and the jet stream is weak, it just gets to about there, then what happens is this water gets cold, the jet goes over the top, under, over, under, over. 1, 2, 3 ridges. And are there some similarities? Yeah, I mean, there you go. That's 12. This is right now. But before we go jumping on this, remember, this is what March of 12 looked like. Really dry here. Super wet northwest. Thunderstorm activity. Lots of it in the plains. Now that's a bit contradictory to what I just told you, right? I mean, we don't see this in March here yet. It's all over in the south and east. But I just want to make sure you notice that while 12 is a year that you're asking a lot about, it is not a perfect match for March. What is concerning about 12 is just how warm it's been so far this March, knowing that if we really crank up the temperatures to end the month, which may happen here, not in the Northeast, not in the Canadian Maritimes over here, but here, there's just some similarities that we need to talk about. So is 12 a perfect analog? No. But I can't ignore this. What do we see by the time we get to the end of March? The models are attempting in the beginning of April to keep it cold here. Now, what did I show you a few minutes ago? Those years, where did I put them? Too big. There you go. Those March to Mays, we tended to get cold in the west, warm east. All right, we're starting to see this major warm-up in the beginning of April, with the coolest air lingering over the east-northeast to start that month. And we just play this out, there's some signal through mid-April of warmth. Now, whatever the model's doing at the end of it, I don't know. I can't explain this. But there's something to be watched, especially as we work our way into the middle of April right there. Okay, so if you hear uncertainty in my voice about 12, I have a ton of uncertainty. I don't know. I'm just trying to draw the parallels to answer some questions. So this is, my opinion, a pretty poor job of doing it, but that's because 12 is not a perfect match. Okay? So where do we finish this? We finish this in South America, where we're continuing to watch storms encroach here. That's Goiás, Minas Gerais right here. This is the area that's been so very dry for months. I think I got it. There you go. This is just the last 30 days. The models, again, next 7 days, next 10 days, we're trying to creep that front farther to the north. And this is day 8 through 14. This is week 2, wetter into this corridor. Now that would be critical, to hit that drought region. But, okay, the models have been pushing this back and back farther in the forecast. And take a look at the new outlook all the way through the end of April. Here we go. This is the week 2 increase right there. But watch the model. Here we go. Ready into April, May through the second week of April, 3rd and 4th. I don't see much of a signal there at all. And I'm not so sure that the model knows what that signal should look like. So we need to watch this carefully after the next 2 weeks to see if we build dry conditions back in eastern Brazil, which is where our drought has been sitting for a while, to see if that's going to impact safrinha crops. All right, that is all I've got for you today. Hopefully that was informative. Thanks for going down that rabbit hole with me. We'll just talk again tomorrow. Thanks.